Hello, dear YouTube viewers. I hope you are doing well. Okay, let's start our video. Life before everything fell apart felt ordinary in the kind of way you never question. I woke up at 6 every morning, got dressed for work, and made coffee for both of us. Mine black, hers with too much caramel syrup. She'd shuffle into the kitchen still half asleep, mutter a thank you, and give me a sleepy smile that once felt like the warmest part of my day. We had a rhythm, a pattern carved out of years of shared habits and small routines. I thought that meant we were safe. But looking back, there were cracks forming long before I ever noticed them. They were subtle at first. Moments where she seemed far away even when sitting right beside me. A silence between us during dinner that felt heavier than usual. Random shifts in her mood that she brushed off as work stress. I try to chalk it up to the normal ups and downs of married life. Everyone goes through phases, I told myself. Everyone feels distant sometimes. Even so, the memories of the early days kept me anchored to hope. I'd think about our first trip together. The long drives filled with loud music, her laughter spilling out like sunshine. I remembered how she used to call me during lunch breaks just to say she missed me. Those thoughts made it easier to ignore the nagging feeling that something had shifted, that something was slipping. Then the signs began to sharpen. She started spending more time on her phone, angling the screen away from me as if it held state secrets. She took longer getting ready, carefully doing her makeup on days she claimed she was just running errands. She'd come home late, offering rushed explanations that didn't quite add up but weren't outrageous enough to challenge directly. I kept pushing my doubts aside. Stress, I reminded myself. Overthinking. Don't become the paranoid husband. Still, every time I asked if she was okay, she'd force a smile that didn't reach her eyes and say she was fine. And every time, something in my chest tightened. The moment everything unraveled came on a quiet Tuesday evening. I wasn't looking for anything. God knows I wasn't. I only picked up her phone because it buzzed on the counter while she was in the shower, and I thought it might be something urgent. One glance at the message was all it took. A name I didn't recognize. Words no husband should ever have to read. A confession of last night. A heart emoji. Her heart emoji. The world seemed to tilt under me. My stomach dropped, my hands went cold, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Betrayal is a physical thing. You feel it like a blow. Anger, disbelief, humiliation, heartbreak, they hit all at once. A violent tangle of emotions I wasn't prepared for. When she stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, humming softly, she froze the second she saw me holding her phone. Panic flashed across her face. I asked her, quietly at first, what the message meant. She denied it. Denied everything. Said it was a joke. A misunderstanding. But her voice shook, her eyes darted, and each lie made the air between us burn hotter. Finally, she cracked. Tears streamed down her face as the truth broke loose. Messy and ugly. She admitted it, admitted him. Admitted nights, she had told me she was working late. The words felt like knives. The argument that followed didn't feel like a conversation. It felt like an explosion. Accusations, apologies, shouts, sobs. Everything collided until neither of us made sense anymore. And then, suddenly, she grabbed her keys, swung open the door, and stormed out into the night. I didn't know then that the betrayal I'd uncovered was only the beginning of something far more shocking. The house felt hollow after she slammed the door behind her. At first, I told myself I didn't care where she went. Let her run. Let her be with him. Let her do whatever she wanted. After what I had seen, after what she had admitted, I felt justified letting anger take the wheel. But hours passed, slow, suffocating hours. The anger began to ebb, leaving something more unsettling in its place. Worry. She still wasn't answering her phone. No messages. No notifications. Nothing. A silence that grew louder with every minute. I paced the length of the living room, rehearsing arguments in my head, and then immediately feeling ashamed for even thinking about her at all. Betrayal and concern battled inside me like two animals locked in a cage. One moment, I hoped she stayed away so I wouldn't have to face her again. The next, I imagined her hurt somewhere, and my chest tightened with fear. I finally sat down on the couch, elbows on my knees, staring at the front door as if it might open. It didn't. And then my phone rang. An unknown number flashed on the screen. I hesitated, half of me wanting to ignore it, but something in my gut made me answer. "Hello." A calm, professional voice responded. "Is this Mr. Thompson?" My blood ran cold. "Yes. This is Nurse Delgado from Riverside Hospital. Your wife has been admitted to the emergency room. We need you to come as soon as possible." For a moment, I couldn't process the words. Admitted. Emergency room. Wife. The world around me seemed to fade, leaving only the pounding of my heart. I forced myself to ask the question I didn't want the answer to. Is she okay? We're still evaluating. Please come quickly." The line went dead. I stood there for several seconds, rooted to the floor, torn between the urge to rush out the door and the bitterness that reminded me she had walked out on me without looking back. Why should I care? Why should I go? But even as my mind rebelled, my body was already moving, grabbing keys, throwing on a jacket, locking the door behind me. The drive to the hospital was a blur of headlights, traffic lights, and the storm clouds gathering overhead. The sky looked as confused as I felt, dark, unsettled, restless. My thoughts spun in every direction. She cheated. She betrayed me. She lied to my face. She left. But she's in the hospital. What if she's dying? What if the last thing I ever said to her was shouted in anger? That thought hit me the hardest. Guilt crept into places where hurt had been sitting only hours earlier. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. The rain began to fall, slow at first, then heavier, blurring the city lights into streaks on the windshield. I drove faster. When I finally parked and rushed into the emergency room, the scene punched the breath out of me. She was there, on a bed surrounded by medical staff, wires attached to her, monitors beeping urgently. Her face was pale in a way I had never seen, lips trembling, eyes red as if she had been crying long before I arrived. She looked small, fragile, terrified. A nurse guided me to the side. Doctors moved quickly around her, exchanging urgent words I couldn't fully hear but couldn't ignore. One nurse glanced at me, then whispered something to another. Their expressions shifted, concern deepening. I stepped closer, but before I could reach her, a doctor blocked my path. "Sir, please wait outside. We need to run tests immediately." I opened my mouth to argue, to demand answers, but the words caught in my throat. I nodded instead. As the doors to the treatment room closed in front of me, all I could do was stand in the cold hallway, watching through a narrow window as the woman who broke my heart fought for her breath. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was fear. The minutes outside the treatment room felt like hours. I paced the hallway, sat down, stood up again, ran my hands through my hair, and checked my phone even though no one was calling. Every few seconds, I glanced at the closed doors as if I could will them open. When the doctor finally emerged, I nearly jumped out of my skin. He removed his mask and approached me with a measured, serious expression. "Mr. Thompson," he began, "your wife is stable for now, but she came in with severe abdominal pain, rapid heart rate, dizziness, and loss of consciousness. We're still running tests, but her symptoms are concerning." I swallowed hard. "Concerning how?" "We're considering several possibilities," he explained. "Severe infection, an allergic reaction, or even a reaction to a substance we're not yet aware of." He hesitated before adding, "We can't rule out poisoning, intentional or accidental, until we have more information." The word poisoning hit me like a slap. I stared at him, stunned. "Poisoning?" I repeated. "By what?" "That's what we're trying to determine," he said. "We'll know more once the lab results return." He offered a reassuring nod and walked away, leaving me anchored to the spot, trying to absorb what he'd just said. Poisoning? Infection? A reaction to something? My mind spun through a list of scenarios, none of which made sense. Why would she be poisoned? How? And by whom? She had left the house in anger, not to swallow something dangerous. Unless something had happened after she stormed out. I pressed my hands to my temples. Everything felt unreal. A few minutes later, the elevator dinged, and I looked up to see someone I recognized, her best friend, Mia. She rushed toward me, her face pale, eyes wide, hair tied up like she had left the house without thinking. "Oh my God, is she okay?" she asked, nearly breathless. "They said she's stable," I replied. "They're still running tests." Mia nodded, but her expression didn't relax. If anything, she looked even more worried. She kept wringing her hands, biting her lip, glancing around as if afraid someone was watching. "Where was she?" I asked quietly. "After she left the house?" Mia froze. I don't know," she said too quickly. My eyes narrowed. "You do know something." She shook her head. "It's not my place." "Not your place," I snapped. "She's in the ER. If you know anything, you need to tell me." She flinched at my tone. "It's complicated," she whispered, "and I'm not sure I understand everything myself." Before I could press further, I heard her mutter something under her breath, something that made my stomach tighten. I told her not to trust him. I turned sharply. "Trust who?" Mia's eyes widened, realizing I'd heard. She shook her head again, stepping back as if retreating from the conversation. "I can't," she whispered. "Not yet. Just talk to her. Please." And with that, she hurried toward the nurse's station, leaving me with more questions than answers. The affair wasn't the whole story. She'd all but admitted that. Not to trust him. The words echoed in my mind. Who was this man to my wife? What had he given her? Why had she run to him instead of staying home to face the truth? A nurse approached and informed me that my wife was awake and asking for me. I took a breath, steadied myself, and walked toward her room. The sight of her hit me harder than I expected. She looked drained, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. Tubes and wires surrounded her, and her hands trembled slightly as she tried to adjust the blanket. When she saw me, tears welled up instantly. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I didn't speak at first. I just stood by the bed, struggling to balance the storm of emotions inside me: hurt, anger, confusion, fear. She took a shaky breath. "I know you're angry. You should be. But what happened tonight, it's connected to everything." Her voice cracked. "I trusted someone I shouldn't have." I felt myself stiffen. "Who?" I asked quietly. She closed her eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek. "Him," she said. The man I cheated with." I clenched my jaw, but forced myself to listen. "He gave me something," she continued. "He said it would help me relax. Said it was just a supplement, something natural. I was upset when I left the house, and I took it. I didn't think. God, I didn't think." Her breath hitched. "And then everything went wrong. My heart felt like it was exploding. My vision blurred. I collapsed. I thought I was dying." A cold wave ran through me. "He knew I trusted him," she whispered. "And I was stupid enough to believe him. I didn't realize until it was too late that he wasn't who I thought he was." In that moment, the anger I'd been holding onto loosened its grip. Not completely, not even close, but enough for something else to seep in, a painful understanding. She was guilty, yes. She had shattered my trust. But she was also frightened, ashamed, and hurt by a betrayal of her own. And suddenly, the nightmare we were in felt bigger than the affair. Much bigger. The doctor returned later that night, his expression more serious than before. He motioned for me to step into the hallway, away from my wife's room. My pulse quickened as I followed him, bracing myself for whatever came next. "Mr. Thompson," he began carefully, "we've completed several tests, including toxicology." He paused, almost as if weighing how much to say. "Your wife ingested a substance that should never have been taken without medical supervision, if at all." My mouth went dry. "What kind of substance?" "It appears to be a combination of unregulated stimulants and synthetic compounds. Very dangerous ones. This wasn't a mild supplement or an herbal remedy. It could have caused cardiac arrest." His expression hardened. "It's not something anyone should give another person casually." A cold, Sinking feeling settled in my stomach. So, this was intentional? We can't say who intended what, he replied, but she didn't simply react badly to something harmless. She was put at risk, serious risk. I stared at him, the weight of his words pressing down like a physical force. My wife hadn't just been reckless. She hadn't been experimenting. She had been endangered, manipulated, used. The doctor placed a hand on my shoulder. She's fortunate she got here when she did. When he walked away, I remained in the hallway, staring at the floor as everything I thought I understood blurred into something more complicated.
She had betrayed me, yes.
But someone else had betrayed her in a way far more dangerous. Suddenly, the affair wasn't just a moral failure. It was a trap she had stumbled into. I returned to her room, my emotions tangled and raw. She looked up when I entered, her eyes still wet, her breathing shallow. She seemed smaller than I'd ever seen her. "What did they say?" she whispered. I closed the door softly behind me. "They said what he gave you was dangerous. Not a supplement. Not something safe." She squeezed her eyes shut, tears leaking out. "I didn't know," she said, voice trembling. "I swear I didn't know." "I believe you," I said quietly, surprising even myself. She took a shaky breath. "I need to tell you everything." I nodded and sat down beside her bed, bracing myself. "At first," she began, "he didn't seem like someone who would hurt me. He made me feel seen, appreciated." She swallowed hard. "I was lonely and confused and stupid. I felt like our marriage was falling apart, and instead of talking to you, I looked for escape. Listening hurt more than I expected. But then he started changing," she continued. "He became controlling, asking where I was, what I was doing. He pressured me to talk to him constantly. And tonight, when I left the house, I was a mess. He told me he had something that would calm me down. Something natural, something safe." Her fingers fumbled with the blanket. I trusted him, and he lied. Anger flared in my chest, not toward her this time, but toward the faceless man who had taken advantage of her vulnerability. "You should have come to me," I said, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. "I know." She looked at me through tears. I was scared.
And ashamed.
And I didn't know how to fix what I'd already broken. I leaned back in the chair, torn apart from the inside. "You hurt me," I whispered. "You shattered everything I thought we were." "I know," she said again, voice cracking. "And I hate myself for it." I took a slow breath. "But when I saw you in that hospital bed, none of that mattered as much as the fear of losing you." The confession surprised both of us. "I was angry, still am, but I didn't want you to die. Not like this. Not because someone used you." She sobbed quietly, covering her face. I reached out instinctively, hesitating for a moment before placing my hand over hers. Before either of us could say more, there was a knock on the door. A nurse stepped inside, followed by 2 uniformed officers. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," the nurse said softly, "the doctors contacted the authorities. Because of the substance found, we need to take a statement." My wife tensed, her shoulders trembling. One of the officers approached, notebook in hand. "Ma'am," he said gently, "we need to know who gave you the substance and the circumstances around it. This isn't just a medical issue anymore." My wife looked at me, fear, guilt, and regret all swirling in her eyes. The man she had cheated with was no longer just a shadow in our marriage. He was now a threat, a danger, a criminal. And as the officers prepared to question her, I realized that our world had changed once again, far beyond anything betrayal alone could have done. The next morning brought a strange calm, the kind that follows a storm but still carries its weight in the air. My wife was stable now, the monitors no longer blaring warnings, her breathing steady, the color returning slowly to her face. The doctors had cleared her of immediate danger, though they warned she'd need rest and careful monitoring for a while. I hadn't slept. I stayed in the stiff hospital chair beside her bed, arms crossed, eyes drifting from her face to the window to the slow rise and fall of her chest. I wasn't sure why I stayed. Habit, duty, concern, or some complicated mix of all three, but walking away didn't feel like an option. Not yet. When she finally woke up, her voice was small. "You're still here?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'm here." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us, normally so heavy, felt different now.
Softer.
Less like a wall, and more like a space waiting to be filled. "Thank you," she whispered, tears forming again. I shook my head. "Don't thank me. Just get better." She reached slowly for my hand, hesitant, as if expecting me to pull away. I didn't. Our fingers intertwined. Awkward at first, then familiar in a way that hurt more than I expected. Vulnerability settled over us like a blanket, fragile but undeniably present. Later that afternoon, when the bustle of nurses had quieted and the world felt muted, she looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in months, one stripped of defenses, excuses, or denial. "We need to talk," she said softly. I nodded. "Yeah, we do." She swallowed hard. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve it. But I want you to know why things fell apart. I wasn't myself. I was lost, confused, and I let someone take advantage of that. It doesn't excuse anything, but I want you to understand." I took a deep breath. "I'm hurt," I admitted. "Angry. Disappointed. You broke something in me. Something I thought was solid." I paused, searching for the right words. "But I also care. More than I want to. Seeing you like this, it scared the hell out of me." She wiped a tear from her cheek. "I want to fix things if you'll let me. If we can." The truth was, I didn't know yet what the future held. Part of me wanted to walk away and never look back. Another part wanted to try to see if the pieces could be picked up, reshaped, rebuilt into something stronger. "I'm not ready to decide today," I said honestly. "But I'm willing to talk."
To try.
Slowly. Relief washed over her face, mixed with guilt and gratitude. "That's more than I expected. Thank you." Before I could respond, a knock sounded at the door. One of the officers from last night stepped inside, tipping his hat respectfully. "We wanted to inform you," he said, "that we located the individual Mrs. Thompson mentioned. He's been taken into custody for questioning regarding the substance involved." My wife exhaled a shaky breath, tension melting from her shoulders. I felt something shift inside me too, an unsettling blend of vindication and dread. The man who had entered our lives like a shadow was no longer looming unseen. He was being dealt with now, not by emotions but by law. After the officer left, I walked to the window and stared out at the world beyond the hospital glass. Cars moved like small, predictable patterns. People passed by unaware of the chaos that had rippled through our lives. For a moment, I let myself imagine a future, messy, uncertain, but possible. When I returned to her bedside, she looked at me with a question in her eyes. I reached out and gently took her hand again. Not a commitment, not forgiveness, but a step. A small one. "We'll figure this out," I said quietly. "One day at a time." She nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. As the room settled into a fragile quiet, my thoughts drifted back to the beginning of all this. The betrayal, the anger, the shock, and then to the moment the nurse called and told me she was in the ER. I let out a slow breath and whispered the truth that had reshaped everything. I thought the affair was the worst part until I learned what really sent her to the ER. Thanks for watching. For more videos, please subscribe our channel Awesome Visual Story.